come on. I just stole her.
That's Ramona the Love Terrier. We're actually going to talk to Aaron about the launch of Airbnb.
Yeah, we just started right here.
Airbnb's first product for dogs.
She makes me look better up here. There's no flattering way to sit on these couches.
Yeah, no.
It really makes you want to stop drinking beer very quickly.
Ramona, up. So we're here to talk about local discovery and the kind of intersection of travel and local. Most local marketing is kind of local in nature. It's kind of targeted at those residents of an area, and it's about frequency. It's about the coffee shop that you go to every morning. It's about restaurants trying to fill seats on a slow evening. You have to look at local.
That didn't take too long.
we thought we were going to lose the mic. I'm on number 4. If that helps. So at Airbnb, you have to look at local through a very different lens. Can you talk about what that is, kind of what your philosophy of local is?
Yeah, so I think our philosophy has changed quite a bit. When you look at sort of where Airbnb started, Brian and Joe are founders, and Nate Placharzik. There was a design conference that was happening in San Francisco. They threw a couple of airbeds, and they had such a great experience. And part of the experience outside of first being able to make their rent was they got to show the city to their guests, and those guests had an unbelievable time. And so they very quickly started to think about the fact that it really wasn't about the accommodation. It was really about that local and authentic experience that happened there.
So it's about much more than the bed and the breakfast.
Yeah, and I think that it continues to evolve that way. I think for us, it's really about 3 things when we think about local experiences. The first one, obviously, the experiences itself. Like as you alluded to, the coffee shop and that restaurant that you would probably never be able to find or didn't know exist from that map that sitting at the airport stand. The second thing is the type of accommodation, obviously, the sort of the uniqueness of the accommodation. And the third thing is really about the local people, right, which you can't forget as well.
And the interesting thing about Airbnb is that you're putting these travelers in neighborhoods where there may not be a lot of traditional tourist traffic. If you think about San Francisco, the hotels are overwhelmingly downtown, Union Square, Fisherman's Wharf. And if you're going to get out to, say, the Richmond district, which I would encourage all of you to visit if you're here from out of town, you're never going to see those amazing restaurants, the great toy shop there, all of that stuff. If you're staying in an Airbnb, you may get out there.
Yeah, so do you have any idea how many, so we sort of say like the traditional downtown hotel district. Anybody take a guess of how many listings traditionally in a city are outside of that district? Say that again? 2,000. So it's generally in the neighborhood. Thanks for answering, by the way. You are right. It's about 75% of Airbnb listings are actually away from that traditional hotel district, as you alluded to. But I also think there's another opportunity as well, and I just had this experience not too long ago. I was in South Beach, Miami. I've been there a couple of times. And I was staying with an Airbnb host, and she took me out to a bar with some of her friends, and we got to this bar, and it's literally a taco shop. It's a taco shop, and I'm walking out there, I was like, I thought we're going to a bar, and then there was this huge lineup for a porta potty, like those plastic doors, and then people were going into the porta potty, and they weren't returning, which was a little bit weird. I don't know if there was a correlation.
That's very being John Malkovich.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was like a correlation between the tacos and the lineup for the porta potty, but you walked through this porta potty door and like it went into this incredible speakeasy. And again, like that was an area that arguably would be very touristy, very a traditional hotel district. So there's a lot of gems as well that are being unlocked by this idea of like local experiences, local hosts.
Now, Airbnb has gotten quite large. I think people don't realize the scale. Do you know off the top of your head how many millions of nights you served in 2015?
There were a lot, and it's growing. It's growing quite quickly.
I feel like I get a new record number sent by your PR team every few months.
You should try presenting them. It's like literally every time you're going in to change it, which is kind of fun. But a couple stats just to give some context. We're now in 34,000 cities and 191 countries, Cuba being the 191st country, which is something that we're really proud of. and 2.4 million homes on the platform. And those include, the craziest tree houses and yurts and all that kind of stuff. But I think the stat that really gives some context in terms of where Airbnb is going and the acceleration that it's seeing is that it took us 4 years to get to 1 million guests on the platform worldwide. And so, just think about how long 4 years of your life is. And last year, 2015, our busiest night, which was New Year's, we had 1.3 million people in a single night. And now we're sort of averaging about 2 million people every single month. And again, that number is continuing to grow. So I think that just sort of shows the hockey stick. But it was not pretty early on. I mean, it was pretty tough days and humble beginnings at Airbnb. It took a few years for the network effects to really start to kick in, and it's kind of a crazy idea.
And yet you've clearly been thinking about local for years. Back in 2012, Airbnb acquired 2 startups, Nabewise and LocalMind, and I think that kind of primed the market to look for the big move in local. Instead, we've seen kind of, smaller products, and maybe you should start by talking about what you're doing in local today.
Yeah. So I think it was a great piece of advice that one of our founders got. I think it was from Paul Graham at Y Combinator, and he said it was better to have 100 people love you than have 1,000 people think you're okay. And I think that mantra has sort of continued to exist at Airbnb. As I said, we've consistently been evolving with this idea of personal hospitality. It wasn't something that the product ever targeted or really mined, right? It was something that just happened as a byproduct to these type of experiences. And I think we have seen over the years more of a propensity for people to come to Airbnb to try and find that content, to really try and match the type of experience that they're looking for when they're traveling with their accommodation and where that's located.
Like, so someone saying, for example, I know Denver has a great microbrewery scene, and where can I stay so that I'm in the middle of that?
Right, and so we're starting to do a lot more of that. In our last release, we're spending more time both trying to get information from the guest experience, so some of the things that things that are happening in that neighborhood and the type of neighborhood. Is it a romantic neighborhood? Is there great nightlife? Is it quiet? Is the place business traveler friendly? So we're trying to get all of that information and surface that in a way that's useful for everybody else that's traveling. The other thing that we did in that release is we created or expanded the guidebooks that our hosts can now create for their where their listing is. So it goes far beyond just the description of we've got great amenities and great Wi-Fi and a pull-out bed. It's really about here are the things that I love about my neighborhood. And the thing that we always have told people with our community meetups around the world is the North Star should always be if your best friend or family member were coming into town, what's the hit list that you would provide to them, right? What are the restaurants and performances and parks and trails that you would show them? That's what we're trying to bring to the front end of the experience.
So that's essentially a host-ridden kind of tourist guide, and is that essentially all generated by hand on the host side?
That's correct. But we're also seeing as well, so there's always been the two-way review system as well, which is also a great place where people leave that type of information. And then obviously the guests now that are also tagging the type of experience that they had when they're leaving their reviews for people.
So if you're a business, you might want to engage with guests and hosts. Mm-hmm. Is there any way to do that today on Airbnb?
So there's a couple of things that we're still very early days on. So we've done a few collaborations with local business improvement units. We've done it with or associations. We have worked very closely with local chambers of commerce and even DMOs, which are the marketing organizations for those specific cities. What they're seeing is that they're seeing our host community are really some of the best ambassadors that a city has for local businesses. We just did a recent a partnership with Brooklyn in New York, and took an attempt to try and sort of quantify the type of economic impact that we were having there, and it was over $200 million in Brooklyn. So this is material, and again, it's obviously growing. We're also finding that cities are now, in different areas, are now getting very excited about this idea about extending the room block, right? When cities qualify for these type of big events that tend to bring a lot of tourism to other areas of the city, they're now adding on the Airbnb block to sort of qualify for minimum room availability.
Interesting. And so going down to the scale of individual businesses, though, is there, they might be sort of engaging secondhand through a chamber of commerce or other organization. Is there a way for them to go to Airbnb and see everyone who's mentioned them, everyone who's included their business in the guidebook?
Not yet.
And if they happen to spot incorrect information, how would they deal with that?
I don't think we have that mechanism as of right now. To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that one.
And do you know if are businesses trying to contact guests and hosts through your messaging, your messaging function?
Haven't seen that. That's generally between host and a guest. We haven't seen any local businesses doing that yet. We're really trying to spend a lot of time right now. I mean, obviously, Airbnb, the size of Airbnb has grown quite significantly, but as a company, we're still a relatively new company, and we're trying to figure out a lot of these things.
Yeah. So for a business that's trying to think about its online marketing plan, should Airbnb be on their radar today, or would you say hold off, we're not quite ready to engage?
I think they should be thinking about it, just because this is the type of pattern that we're seeing, and this is, if there's one thing that's unique to this category of travel, it's this whole idea about experiences, right? And I'm sure we've all heard the millennial conversation quite a bit lately, and what used to be the BMW in the driveway saying like this, I've made it, is now about providing the opportunities for the millennial generation to be able to say, I got this great photo that I'm going to post on social, and that to me is sort of the line in the sand for making it. And so I think the opportunity for local businesses is to really focus on what that experience is right now. And to me, this is not an Airbnb statement. This is just my sort of experience with traveling and talking to travelers. Is we've become so connected in all these different technologies and sharing our lives with people, but you cannot remove that feeling that you get when you meet somebody in person. I think that's really what has really accelerated Airbnb, are those personal experiences. And so, how does that translate to local businesses? I think businesses that are understanding that people are now, the tourism dollars are now coming to their small business, which they probably would not have seen in years past. But providing those type of personal experiences and those opportunities for people to share their stories they're going to do really well.
One interesting thing that might be broadly applicable in digital marketing is your photography program. Can you tell folks a little about how Airbnb gathers photos of host properties and why you do that?
Yeah, so nobody tweet this out because I'm not sure if it's a correct statement, but we're one of, right, you're not going to tweet it out, right? Sure.
We just took down the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. I think we have one of the largest repositories of home photos in the world right now. One of the things that our founders did really early on, which a lot of the time outside of sort of building trust at scale, they would point to as one of the things that helped accelerate Airbnb's growth so quickly, was they literally went door to door taking professional photography of people's listings in the early days.
This was Brian and Joe. I think Nate was stuck back at home coding.
That's right.
So Brian and Joe traveled to New York with backpacks of camera equipment.
Right. And when I say professional photography, like Brian and Joe professional, they're going back.
They were design students.
They were right. So they certainly had an eye. But so they started seeing that some of the listings that photos were the lighting wasn't great, and so they went in and that really unlocked the type of experience that people were having. We now have a program worldwide where our host community can actually apply. They basically click a button, and we'll send a professional photographer right to their door, and they'll upload those photos on behalf of the host.
And this is now a highly automated system, right? The requesting, commissioning, payments to the photographers,
it's totally seamless. It literally takes 15 seconds. The quality is absolutely outstanding. And I forget what the percentage is now on the site, but there's a huge percentage of people that just come to Airbnb just to be inspired, right, by the photography. So it's really something that you never would have, in a million years in your business plan creating this thing said this is going to be one of the biggest drivers to the site, right? It's just people coming to look at to look at beautiful photographs.
So do you think that will inform, say your local efforts, the way you took something that was very bespoke, Brian and Joe with a backpack going from host to host, doing it by hand. Now you've got like this worldwide at a massive scale, heavily automated. Do you think that your local efforts will take a similar track?
Yeah, there's no question about that. And our founders are absolutely relentless with pushing this message. And again, it goes back to 100 people loving you versus 1,000. And they will always push us, especially as we're experimenting and iterating on the product, to make sure that we're doing things that don't scale, right? And then we'll figure it out. But they really want us to be super intimate in the local markets. We're in 34,000 cities, so it's tough to do that, but great excuse to travel.
So you're going to get in there, get your hands dirty, figure it out, and then scale it up.
Right. So they're learning a lot of things from the core business that as you get into a company that scales this quickly, if you don't solve it first, you're just scaling the problems as well that come along with that. Right. So we are very meticulous and very thoughtful about how we how do we understand what the market requires, how do we introduce product that solve for it, and then how do we roll it out properly.
One of the problems you have solved is payments. Do you think we'll see, getting payments from the guest, forwarding the money to the host, handling all that financial fun in between? Do you think we'll see, a day when you can buy a package at Airbnb, like get that reservation at a restaurant, buy the prefix menu, have it all wrapped into one fee?
Yeah, things are moving so fast that it's obviously tough to speculate where this thing is going. But at the core of what we do, we are always trying to have the best user, the best guest and host experience. And so if that's something that we think, it could help them out, then, we're always going to think about those type of things.
Okay, some interesting potential directions for Airbnb. Do we have questions from the audience? We've got a microphone coming around.
That is a very bright light.
I think we've got time for one or two questions.
Thank you.
Question for you on having something already stocked in the Airbnb is something that I've heard from a handful of folks, friends when they're traveling. They want to have maybe the groceries are already placed in the home or things along those lines. Is that something that logistically you guys have thought about? And secondly, on top of that, the idea of almost like a concierge service that you could almost up, if I was a host, I could subscribe to some sort of concierge service for my guests at an additional premium. Are two ideas I've heard kicked around just from friends who travel a lot with you guys. I was curious if those are verticals that you guys are considering.
Yeah, so I think a lot of those things that you just mentioned are already happening naturally, right? This idea of personal hospitality, and I've had a number of trips where I've booked a listing and the host has said, like, what would you like? I think that today Airbnb is about the accommodation, and I think if you were to look around the corner, I think we could do a much better job of being more involved in the entire trip, and I think those type of aspects can certainly are being thought about now.
All right, I think we can take one more question, David. Is that good? If there is one. All right, I think our time is up, unfortunately. All right, round of applause for Aaron.
Thank you.
And we'll hand it back to David.